Bigoti here again. In this tutorial, I'm gonna be showing you the difference between count and count A in Excel. Okay, so before we start into the whole stuff, what is count in Excel? So count in Excel is a function that is used to count the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. It ignores cells that contain text, logical value, or errors. So now what count basically does is that it will count in the cell, it will count number of cells in a range, like it will for this particular cell. Now it will count the number of cells in that range. So what does that mean? Let's see, this is cell B, right? So it's going to count the total number of what we have in this cell, and it will output it. That's what count does. Okay, so let's just delve into it and practicalize it and see how it works. Okay, first thing first is that you know that whenever you want to operate on Excel, you are going to start with an equality sign, right? Equal to sign. And this is a function that Excel understands, just like, say, a programming language. So obviously before you start anything, you have to say equal to for Excel to take it as an input that it can interpret, or as a language that it can interpret. So I'll say equal to, then I'll type count. So you can see once I type count, it brings every other things that has to do with count and the likes. So what I want is count. I'll double click on count. Now it's asking me value 1 through to value 2. So now what I want to count is a range, that is from a particular place to a particular place. This particular cell, now let's assume we have a data cell that is up to, let's say, maybe like 1000, 3000 and more. So if you want to count the number of cells there, how do you count it? Will you start counting from 1 through to 3000 or 4000? So that's going to be a huge or a whole lot of work. But with this particular function, it will be very easy for you to know the total number of cells in that range. Okay, so for this retailer ID now, I want to know, and another thing is this: for count only understands numeric values. Please don't forget, it only understands numeric value, or it will return a numeric value. How do I mean? If it sees anything other than numeric value, it won't count it. Okay, so now I'm going to hit this cell now, which shows that from this range to this range, that is from B1 through to the last value of B. So next thing is for me to just hit enter. Now you see that it outputs 39. So what does that mean? It means that if we count this data set for this particular cell, now if we count 1, 2, this is 1, 2, 3 through to 40, right? Now, and it outputs 39. Why? If you remembered, you remember that I said once it is not a numeric value, it won't count it. So since this retailer is not a numeric value, that's why it ignored it and it started from this place as 1. Now this retail is an alphabet, right? It's not a numeric value, so that's why it truncated it and didn't regard it as what it should count. So now, what if we want to, okay, yeah, so that's that about that. So whenever you're using count, it's simply it simply counts numeric values. What about if you want to count? Okay, now what about if you want to count this? This is not a numeric data. Okay, so let's say count equal to count. So now I want to count the cells, the data in this particular cell. Hit OK. Now you will see that it gives out a 0. Why does it give out a 0? It will return a 0 because count only outputs numeric value. So once it only counts numeric values rather. So once it is not a numeric value, it will never count it. It will always return a 0, and 0 just means false also. So it will return a 0. So now what if we want to know the total number of data we have in this cell? So instead of using count, we are going to use CountA. Well, maybe CountA means count all. It's still the same function to count all, whether numeric, alphabet, or whatsoever. It will count it. So then click on this. Now you see that this brings out 40. It brings out 40, which is the total number of what we have here, right? Because it counted this inclusive. It counted this inclusive all through to 40. I hope you can see the difference between count and CountA. Count and CountA. So the difference between them is that count only counts numeric values, while CountA counts maybe like a number, alphabet, right? So that's basically it. So in case maybe you have list of data sets that is like 3,000 and you want to know the total number of each cell, you can easily count it using this method. So that's the difference between count and CountA. So this is going to be the end of this tutorial. I hope you find it really helpful. If you're interested more in stuffs like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I drop more tutorials back to back, like I said, graphic design, UI UX design, and data analysis of this such. So if it sounds like something you'll be interested in, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you on the other time. Thank you.